Hey there, I thought I'd make another slideshow, but this time instead of music, I'll explain what's going on. This is a river crossing we did. That red stuff down the middle, that's all explosives. They're all tied together. They drill through the ice and put casings through and then load their shots. And then they set it off. It was something else, man. Like, we watch it from the other side. It just went like boom, all the way across. You can see the shrapnel coming up and all the dirt flying and everything all the way across the river. It was about 400 meters or 500 meters. Here's where it got to the shore. Like, it was more than just 6 explosions. That's all we got. It was more like pop, 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 all the way across the river. It was awesome. Here's a guy who was, I don't know what he was on that day. He was told to pick up all the shrapnel and stuff from that blast and to stay on that island. You can see there's a back towards the bottom of the picture. But instead he decided to go out in the river, and he didn't know where the channel was or the hole that had been blasted, and he fell in and just about drowned. He had to come out through the back window. He's lucky to be alive. It was crazy. And here they're all hooked onto the hoe trying to get it out. It took quite a while to get that sucker out of there, but they eventually did get it out. And I don't even think that guy got fired, but unfortunately my boss got fired because the guy lied and said he told him to go in there, which is untrue. I'm sure he wouldn't have done that. And so here you can see, yeah, they just about got it out. But it was pretty interesting. In that first picture that it showed there, that was me at the other end starting to dig from the other side. Here's another, there's like a creek crossing we did. It's a 42-inch pipe, but it's has 6 inches of gunite on it all the way around, so it's quite heavy. They had 13 94s and 13 hose on the counterweight. Putting hose on the counterweight is not a good idea. I didn't know any better back then, but now I do. It was too heavy, and it started flipping all the side booms over, as you can see, and the hose couldn't hold any weight down. Here you can see it's pretty much got away all the way down. I'm at the far end there. I'm one of the only hose holding on to the pipe. The one side boom in the middle, you can see there, just about flipped right over. This guy at the back in the bottom corner, he just about got squashed because the one hoe couldn't get off to the side of him. He had to sit behind him. So when his counterweight lifted up, his bucket slipped off towards the operator. You can see it just slipped off the counterweight there now and is going to smear him off that side boom. The only thing that saved him was it rode up the cables of the boom cables there. In this picture, if you look right down the bottom corner, he's already bailed off and the bucket's riding up those boom cables. He's lucky to be alive. And in the next picture that's coming up, you'll see the next picture here, that boom with the boom that's straight up like that boom had flipped right over on its side, and his cable come unhooked, and he flipped back the other way. You can see his track is up the other way. When it flipped up the other way, the blocks came through the center of the boom, and the 1.5-inch cable almost took his head off. He was lucky to be alive too. And then it snapped the counterweight off because it came down on the hoe bucket that was supposed to be holding down on him. It was pretty crazy. These are some of my pictures. Those were copies of pictures from somebody else. Here, in these pictures, you can see how that hoe couldn't get off to the side because of the cut of the hill. So he had to sit behind. And in the next one, you'll probably see, here you can see it has already slipped off the counterweight and it's going towards crushing that guy. You can see the boom lines there now. It kind of just slipped and slid up the boom lines. Never do this. Never put your whole bucket on a counterweight. Very bad thing to do. In this next picture, you'll see this is when we were right-of-waying that hill out. It was all rock. It was quite a ways down. We had to drill and blast it here. It was quite an experience. I didn't realize you could throw boxes of dynamite around like that at the time. They just tossed them into my bucket, filled the whole thing up with boxes of dynamite and Amex. It's like a fertilizer covered in diesel fuel or something. It's an explosive. They pretty much filled my whole bucket up with all this, and then I just carried it down. But they just toss it around. They're not worried about anything there. I guess it's pretty safe as long as you don't have a blasting cap or some big shock to make it go off. Here, this is after it's right away out. We're putting the bridge in down at the bottom there that you saw in the earlier pictures. This is another river crossing we did. This is back behind Dow Chemical. We crossed the North Saskatchewan River. That hoe is a 700, and it's on top of a 10-foot high sleigh. What they did was it got on the sleigh at the far end, and they drug it out into the river and down through the channel, and then another hoe walked in, another 700 walked in on the shallow side, and they started digging at the middle of the channel, and they just pulled him back towards shore. This is a picture. I was out in the middle of the river bailing away from him on a 550, and here they pull him up to the bank, and then he gets off and digs the rest of it out. These guys are divers. They went down into the bottom of that trench and checked it. Why? I'd never do that. It'd be crazy. But here are all the pipes. We pulled 7 pipes across with the same donkey winch, all attached to the same pole head. And then they cut it off, and in the next picture you'll see they spread them all out. And those are the 700s in the middle of the river, backfilling it later there. In the next picture you'll see where we came into the back of Dow Chemical. All the lines, there was 6 of them. We put an extra one in the river. Had to be 3.5 meters apart. So I dug all that ditch out, and those piles of dirt you see in the middle there, that was, I went over top of a hotline, so they wanted minimal disturbance. Like we just went over a hotline only by a foot or so. And then off in the distance you can't see, but I went underneath a bunch of hotlines. But it wasn't quite as wide back there. It was only like 2.5 cleanup buckets wide probably. This is another river crossing we did. This one we took a 245, and it's quite the setup. You take the tracks off it, and then you widen them out. And in this next picture you'll see you add an extension to the stick, a little bit more counterweight, and an extension to the house to get so that you can go out in deeper water. It gets you about 10 feet off the water, which is pretty cool. And here's putting it together. There's putting the track frame, the extra wide track frame on. And in the next picture you'll see this is me inside the hoe. They figured I should ride in there while they took 394s and set that 245 up on top there. But then they realized they really didn't need me in there, so they set it back down, let me out, and then they just set it up there with the 3 tractors. Once they got it up there, then they bolted it on. In the next picture you'll see that there's just bolting it all together there. Once they got that bolted down, then in the next picture you'll see they had to add that extra piece of counterweight to balance out the extra length of stick that they added on. In the next picture you'll see that's me shoving the stick into the extra piece there, and then they just drilled the pin through there. And in this photo, that's the finished product. Up there you can see there's a laborer, somebody up by the cab. You had to park it by a dirt pile so you could get in. It was about 10 feet high. Unfortunately, it was late in the fall and the river started freezing over, so it wasn't safe to use the safety boat anymore because of big ice chunks floating down it. So they postponed it, and I ended up having to go up on ditch, and I never did get to run that hose. I was kind of disappointed. It would have been nice to dig through there. And here's another job we did in Terrace, BC. We ran a pipeline down they dammed the creek at the top of the creek and ran it down to a powerhouse at the bottom. It was a 60-inch line. Basically I had to run it like a water and sewer line. This is an aerial we put in on that job. As you might be able to see, there's a pedestal on this side and one on the other side. We had to walk a 2-joint section across a bridge. Actually, we used that truck in the top of the picture. He had a bung on the back of him, and he drove across with that pipe tied because the bridge is too narrow. So he drove across, which was kind of sketchy, and then he passed it to that side boom, which took it off the truck. And then once the side boom got a hold of it, then that hoe come along, gave him a hand. And on this side, there was me and another side boom. We grabbed it, and then we all, in the next picture, you'll see we walked it down to those pedestals and set it on those pedestals. And here's a picture. This is from the other side. That's me and the hoe there. We're setting it onto the pedestal. Once we had it set on the pedestal, then I had to dig out and connect the mainline ditch there. You can see that bridge up on the left-hand side there. That's the bridge that we went across. I had to dig right up beside it to get the pipeline through there. And once we got that through, then we did the tie-in. There's us doing the tie-in there. And they set the corner section in, and they have to weld it internally and externally. As you can see there, those blue things, yes, those are 60-inch external clamps. Try packing those around. On the inside, they had a hydraulic thing that would take the egg out of the pipe, because that 60-inch pipe was just so flexible, and they needed to get the egg out. They actually had a ring welded around there. You miter it to make the corners, because they couldn't bend that stuff. Here's another aerial. This is the bottom of a very steep hill. It was a crazy hill. This is a picture from the down. That was the upside of the stream. This is the downside of the stream. This looks like it might have rained a bit here. The creek's going a lot faster. And in the next picture, you'll see that hill. Pictures don't do it justice. It's huge. It's crazy steep too. They let me down on a cable to dig it, and it was pretty nuts. One other hoe operator was doing the cleanup afterwards, and the hoe got away on him. They didn't have him cabled, and he wouldn't go back on the hill anymore. It was just nuts. It was insanely steep. Pictures just don't do steep hills justice. In the next picture, this is the finished product. Here we come down to a powerhouse at the bottom of the hill, and the 60-inch pipeline wide into two 30-inch turbines, and the head pressure from the creek being diverted into the line spun these two turbines and generated power for BC Hydro. It was quite the job. We had an hour's boat ride to work one way. We were up an inlet near Seashelt. It was pretty cool. And that's basically it. I hope you guys liked those stories, and I might have a few more for you later. But for now, I'll just leave it at that. And thanks for watching my videos, and I'll see you next time.